And here we go. So Brett is just kind of talk you guys through what the changes have been and what you can now do. So what we're now going to do is actually go through a couple of test scenarios of different notifications that you can send using this new kind of interface and the new features. One of the kind of main things that you'd want to do when you've gotten your notification set up, and something that we always recommend you do as a first step with notifications, is probably just send yourself a test notification. Now, this is one of the new features that we've added that we didn't really have before, is that you can now send yourself a test notification, both as a push notification and as an in-app notification. You were previously able to do this as a push, but not as an in-app notification. So let's go ahead and set one up. You can see in my app here, I already have a couple of notifications that I've sent already. We can go through and kind of look at the different options in a little bit when we send a couple of new ones. For now, what we want to do is click the Create New button. What we want to do first of all is just enter a title. So I'm just going to write this is a test. Remember, this is just a test notification that I'm going to send to myself, just to make sure that everything's working. So my message can also just be something like this is a test. As you can see, it counts down the characters, so you will always see how many characters you have left when you're kind of typing in your message. It's just kind of to help you out, so you don't have to remember the actual character limit. The studio will kind of take care of that for you automatically. Now, we can select to optionally add in a link. If you're sending yourself a test notification, I would recommend just including a link just so you can test it and make sure it's working. The options are you can link to a specific screen within your app. Now, if I click this button, what happens is I see this kind of new fields, and I can click this link to see a list of all of my available screens within my app. I can also select an animation. Alternatively, I can also link to a specific web page. So, for example, I can link to the Flipit web page. And so once I've added in my link, we can click next. But anytime during this process, I can also just go through and save it as a draft if I want to come back to it at any time. You can see this is now added here at the top. We can see our title, we can see the message, we see this is status of draft, and we can see that I've added a link. Now, to go in and kind of complete this, to actually send this to myself as a test, what we'll do is we'll click the edit button, and it'll take us into the edit interface again. Now, we can change the message if we want to, but at the moment I'm happy with this. So I'm just going to click select recipients. And here we're going to select who we want to send this notification to. And so because I just want to send this to a test device, I'm going to switch the preview here and say just test devices. Now you'll see here we've got something that says estimated users. At the moment it says me 0. If we switch back to all users, you can see it's 139. So if I were to send this notification to everyone, it would go out automatically to all of these 139 people. But if we switch here, this update, so you can always see kind of an estimate of the number of users that will actually get your message. For actually sending yourself a test notification, or maybe you'd want to send it to yourself and a couple of colleagues just to make sure it's working. If you're sending a push notification, I would definitely recommend sending it to both somebody with an iOS device and with an Android device if you've got the app live on both, just to make sure that the kind of configurations and the setup has all been done right. The way that this works is you need to find your device ID and paste it into this box here. Now, this kind of explains this for you, but just to let you know that a device ID, you can find this if you go into your app and click on About This App. Usually you can find About This App at the bottom of your hamburger menu. If you tap that and it opens, you should be able to see a device ID, and that's what you put in here. If you're sending this to multiple people, just separate them with a comma in between, and you should be able to see the number of users this will be sent to. So you can see this is now only going to one user, which is me. Optionally, we can add some notes. These notes are only internal notes. So this is just kind of, if I want to let everyone else know that this was just sent, Joe testing, then everybody else will kind of know this as well. So it's just kind of a best practice to leave a couple of notes. If you're a few people working on the same app, then it's just really useful to know kind of what notification was sent and when. If we're happy with this, we can prepare for send and move to the next section. What we can do here is select when we want this to be sent. Because this is a test notification, I want this to be sent now because I would like to see my notification straight away. I want to test both in-app notification and a push notification. But if I wanted to test just in-app, I just deselect the push. If I want to select just push, I deselect in-app. So it's pretty straightforward and pretty quick to do. And for this use case, I'm going to send both. If we then click review, we get to see a preview of what the push notification will see. At this point, you don't really see a preview of what the in-app notification will look like, but you can see the message up here just to confirm that it's correct and that's the way you want it to be. Obviously, what you would do as soon as it's sent is probably just open up your app and check that it looks okay in your actual inbox. If it's something we're not happy with, you can always click back at any point. You can click back and you can change everything. And then when we're happy, we move forward again. You can see my settings are saved. So it's pretty easy to go back and forth if it's something that you want to change at this stage. And when you're happy, you click send. What then happens is the notifications overlay will show you a little success message just so you know that it's been sent. I can click OK. And then this now will come here. So you see I've got my drafts at the top. And I now have this one as a send notification. So this is changed. I can see my notes. I can see this was sent to one user. And the difference kind of between if we look at something that's saved as a draft versus something that's actually a sent notification, as Brett already mentioned, a draft notification, you can come back and edit this at any time. Once this notification has been sent, the edit button disappears and you don't have this option anymore. What you can do is you can copy this notification if you want to create a duplicate. This is really useful, and I'll show you this in a little bit. If we want to do segmented notifications and send them to different types of users, it's really quite easy to use the copy function to create duplicates of the same notification and maybe just change, the target audience. Another thing that's different for send notifications is we've got this button here, which shows us the push notification results. So if I click this button, it will tell you how many devices received this notification and how many kind of batches were sent. You can also delete a notification. Bear in mind that deleting the notification from here, that will also delete it from your notification inbox. So deleting it here will delete it from the inbox, and it will also delete it from this list. So that's how you can send yourself a kind of test notification just to make sure everything's working. Now let's go in and have a look at how can you send a notification to all of your app users. Now, one of the use cases that Brett mentioned was event apps, for example. Event apps are really good to use for notifications, mainly because you want to constantly kind of communicate maybe changes in the agenda or changes in kind of room numbers to any users. So with that kind of in mind, what we can do is we can click on the create new button. We can enter a title. So let's say we are at an event. Let's say we have one of our main sessions changing kind of room location. So we can say, session 1, new location. Please make your way to room 2. And then if you wanted to, you could alternatively leave to something like a floor plan screen if you had it. Now, if you do select to link to a screen, I'm just going to select one as a way to show you. If we do this, we can also preview the screen. So if you select up your linking, we can click preview target screen. This opens up an overlay where you can see what the screen will look like. If you're happy with the setup here, we can click on to select recipient. In this use case, because it's during an event, we probably want this to go to all app users. Some event apps doesn't have a login or any kind of security, especially if apps are released kind of internally on your MDM. I know you quite often don't have any security on there, so you can just select the all users. Some apps that are live on the public app store, sometimes they will have some screens in the app that are kind of public and open for everyone to see, and some screens that are kind of locked behind like a level of security authentication. what you can do for those screens is, in those cases, is select this option, which is signed in users only. So you can see in this instance, our estimated delivery is actually changing quite rapidly. So it goes from 139 to only 14 users. So it really just depends on your use case. In this case, we can just go all users because we want everyone to know about this room change. Then if I click prepare for send, we can decide if we're going to send this now or later. At the moment, I'd want to send this at this time because it's an urgent change and it's not something that you'd maybe have visibility to kind of schedule it for a later time. So I'm just going to select this for now. Because the kind of notification this is, it's urgent. It's something that we want users to see even if they're not in the app. We definitely want this to be a push notification. Now, it's optional to also have it as an in-app notification. What I would say in this use case is if you think it's relevant for the user to know this, even after the kind of session is passed, then you can also send this as an in-app. But in this case, I don't actually think it's relevant, so we can just deselect this option. If I then click to review, it will show you just the preview for what the push notification will look like. You see, we don't have the message kind of showing above because we're not sending this at the moment to the inbox notification. So I'm just going to go ahead and send this notification, and you can see it's been successfully sent. Again, when you've sent a notification, it kind of appears here in the list, so you can see when it's been sent, and again, you can go through and see all of the history of it. Now, one thing to note is when you've sent a notification as a push notification, you see we're missing the delete option. The reason for this is that once you've sent a push notification, there's nothing really for you to delete. It's sent automatically. You can't take it back. You can't edit it, and you can therefore not delete it. Whereas this notification here was sent as an in-app notification. So deleting this deletes it from the inbox itself. So that is our kind of second example of how to send a specific notification to all of your app users that needs to go out instantly. Now let's look at the more kind of specific features that we've just launched, which are things like sending notifications to some users at a specific time. Now, this app that I'm kind of using to show you this with is an app that we kind of use internally with Fliplead for things like HR, for things like submitting expenses and so on. So what we can do is we can say, we're going to send a notification to remind the Fliplead team to submit their expenses. So what we can do here is we can write a title. Let's say it's time to submit your expenses. And then what you might want to do is kind of personalize this per department. Now, maybe different departments have different sets of rules. Maybe they have different managers that are kind of approving their expenses. So maybe what you actually want to do is kind of customize this message per department. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a message to say, make sure you submit your expense for Jane Doe to review. Let's imagine Jane Doe is our manager, right? And then what we're going to do is we might want to link this up to a specific screen in the app. We might want to just leave it as it is. I'm going to go ahead and select our recipients. And then here is where we can kind of create our segmented lists of users that we want to send this notification to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all select only signed in users because I know everyone that I want to send this notification to should be signed in. And then what I want to do is click the add filter button. Now, once I click this button, you can see there's a couple of new fields kind of showing up here. The way that this works is it says here, all recipients must match all of the following kind of rules that you're setting up. Now, these rules needs to somehow be mapped in your kind of user data source somehow. So we can set up different rules to say, you know, if you're in this department, show the notification. You just have to make sure that somehow the app will know what department each user belongs to. So I know in my data source, I know that the column of my title is department. So I'm just going to type that in here. And now you're going to have to kind of double check with your data source to see that the column titles are exactly right. this notification screen, there's no kind of relationship to kind of help you along with this. So what I kind of recommend you do is, before you kind of go in to do this, if you're uncertain, just take a quick look in your data source, copy the name of your column, and then just paste it in here so you know it's exactly a match. And so once we've decided what column our kind of segmentation is coming from, then we're going to look at the actual rule. So if we look at this option, we can see we can have equals, not equal, is one of, is not one of, and so on. So this is quite good, because what we can really do is we can kind of specify what departments we want to send this to. So for example, if I want to send this to a couple of departments, what I can do is I can send department is one of, and then let's say we can say sales. And again, you should be able to see that this estimate is updating, so we now have 2 people. And maybe I also want to add the customer success team. And again, you should be able to see that this is updating. And if it's not updating, then the best way to do is just double check your values. And I can see here that I didn't get this right. And again, the reason is that it needs to be exactly the same as the different departments are added in the kind of user data. So I'm actually going to give this another go, and I'm going to say customer success. And here we can see this is now updating to 8 users. So I know this is right. I know I'm expecting this to go out to about 8 people. Again, if I wanted to, I can write some notes. So I can say reminding CS and sales about expenses. And then we can hit next to prepare for send. If you wanted to have multiple rules, you can do that, and you can just kind of click here to add new filters, and then you can remove them if you don't want them. Anytime, remember, you can save this as a draft and come back in and finish it off if you're uncertain about, you know, your data source column or the values that you have, or if you just want to double check that you're kind of getting the right amount of users that you're expecting. You can save it as a draft and then come back and finish it off later on. But now let's go ahead and prepare for send. For this kind of notification, what I can do to make my life a lot easier is actually schedule this to send at a time that is kind of convenient and when I want people to be reminded about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click later, and I'm going to say I want people to be reminded on Monday, and I want people to be reminded maybe at 10 a.m. GMT. Now, with the time zones, the way that this works is if I schedule this for 10 a.m. GMT, it means that all of my users will get this notification during this time, no matter where they're based. So for example, if we take the customer success team in Fliplet as an example, I'm GMT, I'm based in London. Brett, who was doing the presentation, he's based in LA. He would get this, you know, at 10 a.m. our time. So this is sent at the specified time zone here. If I wanted to send it at Brett's time zone, then I could go through and I can find it here and send him maybe a separate one if I wanted to make sure he gets it in his time zone. And because of the type of notification this is, I want it to be both push and in-app. The reason being is I'm expecting people not to be in the app, so I want to really remind them even if they're not in it. So I'm going to keep this as a push. I also want them to, next time they open up the app, to be reminded about it again. Maybe they don't do it straight away. Sometimes we all kind of just look at our notification but think I'll deal with it later, which is why I also want to have the reminder for them in the in-app inbox notification. So I'm happy with my settings here. I'm going to click review, and I'm going to just check that I'm happy with everything, and I am. We can see here that it's sending to 8 sign-in users, matching all of the following. Department is either sales or customer success. So I'm happy with this. I'm also happy with the time I've scheduled it for. So I'm going to click schedule and OK. So we can see now my new notification is here. Until it is sent, you will still be able to edit it. So this is one of the really good things about kind of scheduling notifications. Until it is sent, you will have time to go in and schedule it. You can also delete it if you want to, and that will just kind of cancel it, and it will never be sent either as the push notification or as the kind of inbox notification. Now, so this is an example of kind of how to segment notifications. It's also a good example of how you can schedule them for the future. Now, let's say I've sent this to 2 departments in Flipweb. Let's say I want to actually send it to a 3rd department, but I want to, again, customize the message because they have a different manager. What I can do to make my life easy is I can click copy. This then opens up the overlay with exactly the same details as I've had before, and I can just change whatever details I want to change. So I'm happy with the message. I'm just going to change this to Mark Smith, which is our 2nd manager, let's say. I'm going to keep all of the same settings. I'm just going to click through and change the recipients. And now maybe what I want to do is click, instead of is one of, because I don't actually want multiple departments. I just want 1 department. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my rule to department equals, and then I'm going to say product. And again, you can see that this is updating. It's going from 14 users down to 2. So I know this is about right. I'm also then just going to change my notes to make sure that this is correct. So I'm going to say product about expenses. Then I'm going to click prepare for send. And again, I want them to get it at the same time so that the teams all get reminded at the same time, but just getting their own kind of slightly personalized messages. Again, I still want it to be push, and I want it to be an in-app notification. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click review. Again, just want to make sure that the message is changed as I want it to change. I'm happy with this, and I'm going to click save. And it's been saved. So there we are. Now we've set up a couple of notifications that are going to be scheduled in the future. We have our draft that we kind of created before, and we have 1 notification that we have scheduled from before. Now, one thing that I haven't showed you yet is just kind of the notes. So remember, we were adding the notes just to make sure that we kind of know why we sent the notification and maybe when it's going to be sent. We can, if we want to, edit it from here anytime. We can also kind of remove them if we want to. We can also add notes to any of our other notification at any time. So we can say this is a test, and we can save it. And it's a really good way to just kind of collaborating and making sure everybody's kind of aware of why and when and how you kind of send the notifications.